That's Gus. He's over that corner that way to tell. Like, why would
There's a camera right there.
got the skin color?
They're gonna zoom.
That was Gus. Like to make a video. Because I told you a while, so I'm like, are you shaking? What does that mean?
You know what? Take a picture of it.
Oh, this one. Really?
Right here.
I think they washed out, but then they washed out even more, so you turn even more black spots. Oh wait, maybe it's that one. All the way over there, next to that. See, right there we can see. It's like right there.
I think they're all girls, right?
No.
I mean, we could ask him.
I think they're all girls because none of them have any pickles.
Let's see. Start with the big.
Yeah, if they do walk up or get close to one of them, don't touch them. They'll want, some of them want to get petted because they've been raised as pets. And now we have them, we're trying to get them to unpet themselves.
Oh, it's coming
Because
to
if you
work.
pet them out here, you touch them here and they like it, so when they walk on the herd and there's 1,000 people standing on the side, they'll walk right
they're
up
running.
on the sidewalk and get petted and they not.
Oh.
But when you have, I mean, literally two Saturdays ago at 4 o'clock, we had 11,000 people out there.
Wow.
And we have 3 on a regular basis that go to the sidewalk. So, all right, so I'll tell you about these guys. You may know a lot more about cattle than I do, but those of you who don't know anything, I will start very basic. This is the breed Longhorn. There are over 800 different breeds of cattle. One thing they all have in common is when they're born one of 2 things. Boys or girls, and that's it. Girls can only identify as a heifer. They are a heifer till they have their first calf, and then they are a cow. And they're a cow the rest of their life. So we use that term obviously generically, because I'll say, look at all the cows out there, you're all going to look. But that tells a rancher there's a bunch of girls out there who have had babies. Boys are all born bulls. The rancher knows how many bulls he needs to service his herd, and the rest of them get snipped and they're turned into steers. So snip, snip. These guys are all steers. I always tell people like these, when they walk away from you, if you don't see nothing, that's a steer. Also, you see how their heads kind of hang low? They got no reason for living. But primarily, we eat steers. We eat steers and heifers, primarily steers. We don't eat cows. People do, but we generally don't in mass, because once they've had a baby, their hormones are different, and the meat tastes different. Bulls, we don't eat them because of the testosterone. Their meat tastes different, and they're tougher. So we eat steers and heifers. These are all steers. They range from about 3 years old to about 14 years old, these guys do. They are donated to us, so you have a little ranch and you decide you're going to get rid of your Longhorn, you can call us if we need one. We'll take it off your hands for free. But let's roll 2 years later, he becomes quite ornery. He becomes mean. We'll call you and say, do you want your steer back? If you say no, or if you say yes, we just get back to you. If you say no, we adopt it out to a no-kill ranch in Weatherford, about 45 miles from here, and it lives happily ever after, forever, never to be eaten. So once they've made it here, they've made it. They live to be about 25 years old. They're very hardy. They don't get sick very often. There's about 26 different DNA markers in them. So they're kind of a mixed breed of everything, but they're the only breed in America that actually developed here in America. So their horns, and their horn shapes and hide patterns are family traits. There's not a single Longhorn alike in the entire world. So we do have 2 brothers out here. They're half brothers, and they're a little hard to see. Because one of them their heads are. All right, so if you look at that second awning back there with that tire's on the ground, see the one with big droopy horns? He's turning his head this way?
Yeah.
Well, first off, his horns are 10 foot 7 inches tip to tip. Now his little brother's to the left, and I can't see his head from here, but he's swishing his tail. He's white with some brown spots on him. He's turned sideways, but he's got real droopy horns also. So they're half brothers. They have the same dad, different moms. The dad had the same horn pattern. Now I will tell you that, well, you think about your own family, you all kind of look alike, but you don't look alike. Some of you are tall, some of you are short, some of you are chunky, some of you are skinny. Some of you like me are the best looking ones in the family. I'll tell my family if I want them to know. So, but anyway, they have all their own personalities. You can't hear them talking, but they do. They talk a lot whenever the food's coming in. But most of the time, they're chitter-chattering with themselves. There's a little pecking. I mean, they are a very smart breed within the cattle breeds. They're not still very smart. They do a couple of things. They sleep, eat, repeat. That's pretty much it. Now, one of the cool things about the Longhorn breed, so you roll back in the cattle drive days, we've all seen like old westerns that have stampedes, and you see all the cattle on top of each other running. You know, people are always afraid they're jumping out of the chuck wagons and getting run over and stomped. That did happen with other breeds, but if they were Longhorns, if Longhorns get fired up and start running, they space themselves out naturally because they want to be able to see. And so in a Longhorn stampede, a person can stand and you'll never get run over because they'll go around you. Now their horns are alive and well. They're full of blood vessels. They're designed for 3 things. Number 1, to keep them cool. It works like a radiator for them. Number 2 and 3 is offense, defense. They are a very docile breed, especially after they've been cut. You become even more, what's the life of that? They become even more docile, but they are docile till they're not. And when they're not, they can become very, very dangerous and very mean. So I read a story a couple years ago. A guy writing the story was a cowhand on a cattle drive in 1873 coming north from Waco. He was brand new on the cattle drive, and he had been told many times by the trail boss to quit chasing the cattle up into the brush because you don't know what's up in the brush. And this was the guy telling the story. He wrote some letters and they put it in a book. Well, he was chased one up in the brush one day, and it was a female, and she had just had a calf. And she protected her calf. And she stuck her horn in the chest of the horse, and it came out by its rear. That's how long the horns were. Killed the horse immediately. Cowboy hits the ground. Trail boss doesn't give him another horse for 3 days, but he makes him carry his own saddle for 3 days and trot along beside the cattle drive until he learned. He said he was going to quit, and the trail boss said, "Your family will never find you. Keep on walking." So he kept walking. But out here a little bit, if you're going to watch the 4 o'clock cattle drive, I do talk about how everybody has to stand up, and I have a goofy little joke about it. But we do have 3 that like the sidewalk quite often. And when they get up there, they just saunter up, but they can come up pretty quick, and they're pretty scary when as big as they are. So the 3 that love the sidewalk, so as you see them, I'll give you fair warning. So straight out from me, you have one that's got a black head. His name's Blacksmith, white body. He likes the sidewalk. The one he's about to bump into right there, that's Houdini. Houdini disappears in the crowd often. That's why they named him Houdini. And then over here on the right-hand side, the fence line, you'll see the brown one laying down.
Yes.
His name's Little Tex. He takes to it. Now, the cool thing about Little Tex is he's also a mini. He's a little bit smaller. But the other thing that's cool about Little Tex is he was the 2022 International World Grand Champion Texas Longhorn steer. They have steer shows just like they have dog shows. So kids raise them, take them to shows. I don't know what he went for because they sell them because the kids can get college money, those sort of things. Yeah. The 2023 went for $194,000. The 2020 went for $175,000. I found those 2, but that one right there I didn't find his price. But so you know he's in between there. Once these guys, because a lot of people like to give them to us because then they can say, because we have the only herd in America, and they can say my Longhorn is with the Fortworth herd. That's kind of amongst themselves a little bragging rights. So these guys can run up to about 35 miles an hour, short spurts. They can go about 4 days without drinking any water. That's why they were so good out in the wild. They definitely protect themselves. About 3 or 4 months ago, I was standing up here giving a tour, and one of them was walking along, and he fell down over here against the fence. 2 of them ran over real quick and were sniffing him and licking him. 3 of them ran over real fast and backed up to him and spread out. Had 18 foot of horns protecting him in a semicircle. Everybody was oohing and on over that, but I thought to myself, I looked over at the other 7 standing in the corner over here, and I thought, which one wants to kill him? Because they were protecting him for a reason. Because sometimes they do get after each other. Very rarely they draw blood. But a while back, I was sitting right here in front of us. A lot of times I'll stand in the shade right here in front of us if it's hot. And that one on the right-hand side, his name's Gus. So Gus with the corkscrew-looking, that little tan with the corkscrew-looking horns, his nose was really, really close to the southbound side of one in front of him. Like real close. Too close. They were all laying down here in the shade, and I raised 2 boys. I'm one of 4 boys, so I got a sneaky suspicion. I know what happened right in his face. I'm pretty sure that one right in front of him tooted, because Gus, he threw his head back. He snorted real hard, but he stuck his left horn in between the legs of the one in front of him who just gassed him, and lifted his hind legs off the ground about 1.5 feet with his left horn by just twisting his head. Every single one of the cattle jumped up and ran to that back fence. Gus was not happy, but Gus needs to learn where not to stick his nose. That's a metaphor for the rest of us. So, but they are really cool animals. They definitely have their own personalities. And the best time to watch them is about 9:30 in the morning when they first bring them out here in the morning time. Especially like I didn't come out here this morning early, but today it was so chilly out here. When it's cold, when it's cool, and they come out from the barn area, they are fired up and love to run and jump and kick and buck each other and hit each other's horns. They're fun to watch. I mean, they are herd animals. They're not going to, they want to be together. They kind of pack up in little pairs and those sort of things. Now, sometimes I'm a YouTube, I get into, holes. I'm starting watching YouTube. The other day I was watching a YouTube about Longhorns, and the fence was 7 foot tall with barbed wire on top, and the bull Longhorn jumped that fence and just cleared it. And the rancher kept saying that he'd drag him back around there. He was like, he'll do it again. He jumped it again. Like 3 times he jumped over it, and finally he took a little old female and put her in the pen. He's like, this is the only way we can keep him in. So he was jumping, but it was amazing. That fence was 7 foot high. He cleared it, just stood right there at the bottom of it and jumped right over. So
No run and start?
No run and start. Pretty incredible. These guys weigh between about 1,500 to 2,500 pounds. During the cattle drive days, they weighed between about 600 and 900 pounds, but had the same horn span. So only about 1% of all beef in America is 100% sold as Longhorn beef. They're very lean and they're very, very good, and we all want to eat better, so we should eat these guys, I guess. But the problem is the rate of return when you're growing them is too slow. You can take an Angus, and when they're a calf, 2 years later, after grain feeding them, you can fatten them up enough that you make them, they go to market. These guys here don't like grain, they only like grass. It takes about 3 years. So your rate of return is too slow. Now we had 10 million of them in 1866, 1927, 100. We almost ate them to extinction. But the U.S. Forestry Service, along with 6 ranches, divided them up and started a breeding program. We have about 330,000 registered Longhorns now. So most people here, we don't have state income tax in Texas. We have property tax. So, but right here in this general area, for 1 head of cattle, you need about 2.5 to 3 acres if you're going to grass feed them. So a lot of people here in this area have yard art, and they are a Longhorn if they got 3 acres, and that's what stands out there, because if I'm going to pay $1,000 a year for property tax, and they put 1 Longhorn on their property, they're going to pay $50 a year. They get the ag exemption.
Ooh.
I don't know how you can own land without them.
Right. So they are really cool animals. I mean, it's just they are definitely the pride of our state when it comes down to cattle. So in just a few minutes, the cowboys or drovers, they'll come out here and start walking them around to make sure they get up. So they do that so they see who's limping and who's not limping. If someone's limping, they'll leave them out here. If all of a sudden he gets one up and they get too feisty and too ornery, they leave him out here. So we have 17 of them, one for every decade that the city's been a city. So, anybody have any questions about these guys? All right, let's go to another little area.